Welcome to the Loadout Music Podcast, featuring intimate conversations with emerging and established musicians, recorded at the Gaslight Studios in St. Louis. And now your host, Aaron Perlett. Welcome back to the Loadout Music Podcast, presented by Shinesty and Wellbeing Brewing. I'm your host, Aaron Perlett, and today we had the pleasure of being joined by Devon Allman. Devon, thanks so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Aaron. Pleasure.
So, as we do on the show, we typically like to really just learn about our guest's musical journey, and I'd love to talk about yours just from beginning to end, because it's funny, you do a really good job of hiding your trail on the internet. There's some people that do a really nice job of kind of not being overexposed on the internet, and you're one of those people. Yeah. I wish I could be, but I'm too much of a whore. But I know you were born in Corpus Christi in the early 70s. We were saying earlier we're about the same age.
Yep.
But what really, I've read that some of the music that really got you into music, got you excited about music, was some of the early Clapton stuff, specifically the Layla album. But what was your kind of musical journey? What was the first time you picked up a guitar, and what inspired you?
The love affair with music started with 70s, rock radio. We had a great station in Corpus Christi called C101. I think it's still happening. C101 was great. They played, that's where I got turned on to Zeppelin and Santana and Wings and Aerosmith and the Stones, and just tons of music. And my mom was really into music. She had a pretty good vinyl collection back then. And I guess by the time I hit about age 5, I was grabbing the vinyls from the living room, take them back to my room. I had my own record player, and I'd kind of, just study the inside and the gatefold and the producer, and I just became a music nerd, at a really, really young age. And I would quiz her all the time. We'd be driving to the beach on the weekend, and, who's that? She'd be like, oh, that's Steely Dan. And, I got really good at knowing who was who, just based on the sound. That was where the love affair started. When MTV came out, all of a sudden radio had a face, and that was a whole new dimension to the love affair, because it's man, ZZ Top, those guys look cool, and I got pretty addicted to logging many hours per day on MTV. And then I guess I was in middle school. I was in junior high, and I was 13. I went over to a buddy's house, and we were just kind of, just casual buddies. We weren't that tight, but he lived close, and we'd hang out after school every once in a while. And he had a guitar in the corner of his room, and the guitar had an inch of dust on it. And I was like, man, Jason, you play guitar? And he's like, oh yeah, man. I'm like, man, play me something, And it was a really pivotal moment for me, because that was the first time I saw somebody play guitar this close, sitting right next to him. And I was like, wow, sit in a concert or TV where it just looks impossible, as a kid. But this guy's playing a Def Leppard song on his guitar right in front of me. And I was like, if he can do it, I can do it. And I went home and told my mom I wanted a guitar, and she had been trying to get me to play guitar since I was really little. So I got a guitar, and within a year I was in garage bands, and that's where it kind of all started.
Well, the fallacy is that I think that for people who don't know your story, there's this presumption that, oh, he's Gregg Allman's son, and his uncle was one of the great guitarists ever. And so, he had a guitar when he came out of the womb. But the reality is, you didn't even meet your dad until after you had begun to play music and it become an interest to you, correct?
Yeah. I met my dad when I was 16, so I was already in bands by that point, So that was, certainly something major that we had in common was that love affair for music. And, it was pretty hard to, ignore his career. They were so huge when I was little. So I knew who he was, and I knew what he did, and I figured we'd cross paths eventually, and when we did, it was great.
And we were talking specifically earlier about just albums that really got you, and one of them was Derek and the Dominoes, of course, Eric Clapton, and the Layla record. And I had read that you had said that if you let it, that it could bring you to tears. Like it really, that record, there's something about it, the passion that he has on that and the sadness that's in that record.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think any good music can move you to, feeling that emotional response. I mean, that record isn't the only one, but, there's certainly some moments on that record, especially with Duane's playing, that are just awe-inspiring, and moving. So yeah, for sure. I feel that way about, Curtis Mayfield records too, I mean,
one of the most underappreciated guys in music, just because,
God, my biggest hero. I've got a tattoo of him on my arm. He was the writer, the guitar player, the singer, the producer, and the record label owner. And I used him as like a blueprint, like model for, kind of where I wanted to take my career. And I'm now all of those things too. And it's pretty cool to have gotten to a point where, one of your heroes was, and he was really a pioneer. I mean, for back then to have his own record label and be producing so many artists and launching careers was great.
Yeah. I mean, there were some, it's funny. It's his career was, when he first was playing music, was more soul, but he pivoted from soul to funk to rock, to where he had this hybrid style. And guys like him, and even Isaac Hayes, because Isaac Hayes changed the face of soul music, because before his Hot Buttered Soul record, soul music were 2 minutes and 30 seconds every song.
Sure.
And then that record, he had like, I think, 2 songs that were 7 minutes long and changed the face of soul music.
That's where the drugs came in.
But I mean, Curtis Mayfield's a guy who, had he not had that light set fall on him on stage, I mean, his career was just phenomenal and probably would have been a lot longer. But of course, he ended up in a wheelchair and then passed away, I think, probably about 15 years ago. But I mean, he is one of those guys highly underappreciated in the annals of music history.
Yeah, I mean, he recorded his last album, on his hospital bed. He did the vocals from the hospital bed. Incredible, just an incredible musician. Like, some of his records are my favorite records. They're so colorful. They're beautiful.
And you are. It's interesting because, and we'll talk a lot about Allman Betts, obviously, but your roots are really bluesy. I mean, they're really. If you kind of go back to your early stuff, your solo stuff, I mean, you feel that blues rock kind of coming through in everything you've done. And even now, I mean, and your voice has this evocative kind of very soulful feature to it. But it's interesting to see, we spent some time talking about what you can find on radio and what you can't find on radio today, and how radio has really evolved. And I remember talking about this with Kenny Wayne Shepherd last year when we had him on the show. But has your interests been in any way, have you had to make pivots because of what you can find in trying to find an audience today? Or have you just always kind of followed your love and your passion and found partners that want to play that with you?
Yeah, that's a really good question. There was never a cerebral approach to any of my records when it came to, the future of the record, or where it could land, or how it could be marketed, or where it could be played. I always thought if I wrote a batch of songs that really mean something to me and tell a story and, kind of reveal a little bit, that they would resonate with other people. And whether it would resonate with 500 or 500,000, it didn't really matter to me. So you go back to like my first record, 2006, it's, the band name was Honeytribe, Devon Allman's Honeytribe. The record was called Torch. And there's a lot of, pretty high octane blues rock. There's some ballads. There's an instrumental on there that's kind of, leans to a Latin kind of Santana thing, kind of all over the map. But I always thought that was a strength, and I just made sure to align myself with labels over the last almost 20 years that would give me complete creative control. And that was the main thing, was like, I don't need somebody sitting at a desk to tell me the kind of record to make or the kind of song or whatever. I know what I'm after, and like I said, if it touches me, then maybe it'll find an audience. But yeah, I've never sat down to write anything with any kind of trajectory in mind of where it could land. I think it's pointless. It kind of takes your focus off of it being sincere.
When you're writing a song, are you typically, do you start with lyrics? Are you starting with melody? Are you just sitting around with a guitar and you're like, I like the way that goes? Or it could be any of the above. It just depends on what you're doing that day, and maybe you hear something, you're like, well, shit, this is a great lyric. I got to build on this.
It's one of the most commonly asked questions is, what's the process for...
I'm such a douche.
No, I think it's good. It's a really good question, because I think some people kind of have a certain way and some people, kind of don't. I'm weird, man. Like, I wish I was one of those guys that sat down every day at 2 p.m. and wrote for a couple hours.
Yeah.
I'm not that disciplined. But what I find that I have to do is I have to live some life. I have to feel things. I have to observe things. I have to, live through a little bit of time. And then it'll kind of just hit me. And I'll go 6 months without writing a song, and then I'll sit down and write 4, in an afternoon. So, and as far as what comes first, man, I could be driving in the car and get a vocal melody, pull out the iPhone, hit the voice memo, sing it. I could be sitting around playing guitar, find a cool riff, pull out the iPhone. So I catalog all these like seedlings, And then when I know that, oh shit, we have to be in the studio in 3 months, then I pull out those seedlings. And at that point, over a 6 months time, there could be 20 or there could be 80. And I'll listen through all of them. I'll pick the ones that are really kind of screaming to be made into songs. And it could be the smallest thing. It could be a song title. It could be one riff, chord progression. And then I just sit down and flesh them out. So it's different every time.
Yeah.
It could be a riff. It could be a vocal melody. It could be a beat that I like sing into my phone. It always comes in different ways.
Yeah, I know. I was driving one day and I was listening to country radio and I heard a Loretta Lynn song, Don't Come Home Drinking with Lovin' on Your Mind. It was like her first #1 song. I'm like, well, shit, I haven't heard that in a long time. And I started thinking about my own issues with alcohol and how that had shaped my behavior around like late night booty calls when I was younger, and even coming home drunk with my wife and she'd be like, get the hell off me, that kind of stuff, before I quit drinking. And I ended up just writing a whole set of lyrics about that song, how I'd listened to it 1,000 times as a kid, but never learned anything from it, and how it had played into my life and my alcoholism and, late night booty calls. And then I had these words, I'm like, I love these damn words. I love these lyrics. I need to build something around that. And I was so inspired. Then I created, composition around that and melody around that, but it was just... But you're right. I like, for me, it doesn't matter. It could be, you get a sound in your head and you're like, shit, I like the way that goes, that beat or what have you, and then you find some lyrics that maybe you got in your computer or your phone, or you're like, this would be perfect for that.
Definitely, yeah. You never know when inspiration will strike,
Yeah.
And but with the Allman Betts Band, we are a little bit more disciplined. We have a co-writer that comes in and he's like our quarterback and our organizer, and we can kind of just be, crazy musicians and writers, and he can, kind of reel it all in. Stalvon is his name. He's a great writer. He's done work with Mellencamp and a bunch of others, but he co-wrote quite a few tracks on both records. So we're lucky to have him. He keeps us honest, and we know that when we fly him out on tour and give him a bunk on the bus, it's like we got to be productive. So we've had some good results with him.
Very cool. We're talking to Devon Allman on the Loadout Podcast. I'm Aaron Perlett. We'll be right back after these messages. Hey, this is Aaron Perlett, and for those who've been listening, know that Well-Being Brewing is pretty much my favorite drink in the world, because I quit drinking alcohol a couple of years ago and discovered Well-Being, and it really has been my salvation. I am fortunate to be joined by Jeff Stevens, who is the founder and CEO of Wellbeing. Jeff, first of all, thank you so much for being a partner with The Loadout. And tell us about, this is such a unique non-alcoholic beer because it actually tastes like great beer.
Yeah. Well, thank you for saying that, because that's the most important thing for us. We invested a lot of money into figuring out how to make great non-alcoholic craft beer. And that was something that I was really interested in. And to have someone like you say, you know what, I can drink this beer and do all the things that I would normally do and don't miss a thing, that makes it all, so great for us.
And it is a craft beer. I mean, I was from the time I was probably 14 or 15, I was a drinker until the time I was about 47.
Yeah.
And I have always been a beer guy, beer and bourbon. And I especially got into more flavorful beers over the past 10 years. But Wellbeing, whether it's the Hellraiser Amber or the Wellbeing, and you've actually got, or the IPA rather, and you've got a pretty nice group of growing products that are pretty impressive. But what's the secret to, when you compare it to some of the other more watered down imitators, what's the secret to making it so good?
Yeah, there's several ways you can make non-alcoholic beer, and we chose this way called vacuum distillation. So what it allows us to do, and this is the thing that comes through, is we fully ferment the beer. We make it just like you'd normally make alcohol beer. So it's ready to be alcohol beer, and then we take it, put it in a vacuum, lower the boiling point of the beer, and gently remove the alcohol. So what you're left with is all the mouthfeel and the flavor of beer without the alcohol. And I think that's where our products are distinct, is that mouthfeel, that aroma, that flavor that really comes through, versus you can stop the fermentation. That's another method. And those are a little more watery, I think, or just don't quite hold up as well, if that makes sense.
That makes sense. Well, Jeff, thank you so much for being a partner. If you want to sample Wellbeing, you can go to wellbeingbrewing.com and use the code Loadout10 at checkout, and you will get a discount on Wellbeing from being a Loadout listener. Jeff, thank you so much for being a partner, and thank you so much for making this amazing product.
Aaron, my pleasure. Thank you for drinking it.
And we're back on the Loadout podcast with Devon Allman. Devon, we were talking just about your history with the blues, and I want to kind of walk through some of your experience with different bands over the years. So, in the 90s, you were with Dark Horses. What was interesting, though, when you started Honeytribe, and it changed names from Devon Allman's Honeytribe to Honeytribe, but you guys took a break, and you took a break. What is it, about 2001 when you had a child?
Yeah, my son was born in 2000.
Yeah, and I found that interesting. And I'm just curious, was it driven by, you said earlier you didn't meet your dad till you were 16. Were you just like, this cannot repeat itself. I need to be a different kind of dad and take time off the road and really...
Well, yeah. I had a choice because Honeytribe started in 99. And it started to take off pretty quick. We were on the road opening for my dad. We were... selling out clubs here in St. Louis. We won an RFT award, Jam Band of the Year. It was really starting to kind of pop. We were starting to record, and my son was born, and I was just like, man, if I do this right now, I'm going to be gone for the first 5 years of his life.
Yeah.
I was just like, man, I don't want to miss those 5 years. Those are the most important years to develop a bond with your kids. So yeah, I broke the band up, and I kind of just was like, I can revisit this, and I remember managers and people at record labels telling me that it's career suicide. You're gonna come back in 5 years, you'll be 33, you'll be too old, and I was just like, no, man, I'm not doing this to be on the cover of Rolling Stone or be a platinum selling artist. I'm doing this because I love music, and I think the kind of music that I'm after is timeless, and it doesn't matter if you're 23 or 43, and so I did. I dove back in. I called all the guys that had played with me in 99. It was 2005, 6 years later, five years later. Said, hey, I'm putting the band back together, and every
proverbial band.
Yeah, and everybody joined back up. and we hit the road and got a record deal within 6 months, and we're in Europe within 12 months and playing on massive festivals, and was just really fortunate how it all rolled out. It was the right timing, and I had the 5 years with my son, and I wasn't like off radar completely. I was playing 3 nights a week in St. Louis, solo acoustic, so just to kind of keep my voice in shape and keep some money coming in and keep my chops up. And it really taught me a lot, when it's just you and an acoustic guitar, man,
you're kind of naked.
That's it.
I mean, you fuck something up, everybody hears it.
Yeah. So if you could pull that off, you can kind of do anything, as a musician, I think. So it was a really formative time. I played a lot of clubs in Soulard, really cut my teeth at the Shanty and Mike and Men's and 1860s. And I really played all over. I played down on the Landing. I played Westport. Anywhere I could get a gig, and they were 3 to 4 hours, solo acoustic, cover songs. Maybe half of those gigs, people were really into it and clapping and engaged, and half of them were like a golf clap after a song,
Yeah.
So really, it thickens your skin and gets you ready for anything. But yeah, man, I'll never regret spending those formative years with my son. We have an incredible close bond, and I know it's because I decided to do that.
And so you put the band back together in 05, 06.
Yeah.
And then you guys broke up again, and you ended up with Royal Southern Brotherhood, which I read that you were initially hesitant because the quote that I saw attributed to you was, you said it's like putting 5 quarterbacks together, which I thought was really, a really interesting way. And I presume what you're saying is, we got a bunch of big guns here, and from a leadership perspective, and a direction perspective.
Well, yeah. I mean, the funny thing is that I had called my friend Mike Zito, who, is an artist out and about there, and we had worked at Guitar Center together when I was in Honeytribe, and I was just calling and catching up with him. And I had to fire a manager, great guy, just, we weren't on the same page, things weren't getting done. And I was just kind of, telling my tales of woe to Mike Zito, and he goes, man, you should call my manager. He might really like what you're doing. And so I did, and we hit it off. He came out and saw the band, loved the band, loved what I was trying to do. And within a month of being on his roster, he said, hey, man, what do you think about starting a band with one of the Neville brothers? And at first I was just pissed. I was like, dude, I hired you to take my career to the next level, and now you're trying to pull me away from the band I've worked so hard on for years, start this whole other band. And it's like, what are you doing, man? And then I really thought about it, and I thought, musically, an Allman and a Neville, and kind of shake things up. Allman Brothers, Neville Brothers never really did any kind of cross collaborations or anything. I thought that is kind of cool. It's different. So, when we did Royal Southern Brotherhood, the reason I said that's like putting 5 quarterbacks on the field and having them go play is because every member of that band led their own band. Even the bass player Charlie Wooten had the Charlie Wooten Project. Jan Rico Scott, the drummer who played with Derek Trucks for years and years, had the Jan Rico Scott band. Cyril Neville had his own band. Mike Zito had a solo career. So it was like, we're all band leaders. What are you doing? That's a crazy idea. Yeah. But the reason the band worked was everybody, really let the music be the boss. We really put the egos aside and wrote some songs, and that was a great, great time, man. That kind of jumped my career, quite a few notches. I remember playing some huge shows in Europe and and headlining and being on the cover of magazines and just being with Cyril Neville. I mean, man, that elevated my singing because I had to sing next to that guy. He's like one of my favorite singers alive. And 2-guitar attack, and we had a lot of fun. And it didn't last very long. I don't think that it was really built to, but it was a great time.
You guys produced some really good music too.
Thanks, man. It was cool to shake it up and go from, that dynamic of being in a band where I'm the leader, I sing every song, I take every guitar solo, joining a conglomerate where like I'm singing a third of the night and taking maybe half of the guitar solos, and it taught me how to be a team player, and it was different.
Yeah,
it was cool though.
And so that obviously leads you into 2018 and the Allman Betts Band with you and Duane and Barry, and you've probably known these guys since you were a teen.
Yeah.
And and so how so you guys have known each other so long. You've all played music, but doing your own thing. What's the driver that says, let's do this, guys? Let's we got a good group of guys. We've always known each other. Was it conversations? Were it like managers that brought you together, said you guys really need, this would be ideal? What was it?
It's never been managers or anything with me and Duane and Barry. We've just been family. When we went, all three of us met on that tour. Well, Barry and Duane knew each other prior to the tour, but I met the two of them on the Allman Brothers reunion tour. 89 was their 20th anniversary, 1989. And the record label put out a box set, retrospective, collection, of their whole career. And
I remember that. I actually have that box set.
Yeah, it's killer. It's a killer box set. Yeah. And at the time, it's so crazy that now, if you go to Amazon and you type in box set, 10,000 of them come up or whatever. But at the time,
that was like one of the first
second.
5. Yeah,
it was the second.
Clapton's Crossroads was the first one.
Yeah, Clapton, that gray 4 CD, 4
with
cassette.
The booklet that had like the family tree in it.
Totally. So like, the Allman Brothers had been pretty dormant through the 80s. And so the label celebrated their 20th anniversary, put that 4 CD box set out, and then convinced them, hey, we'll sell these things if you go out on the road, if you guys can patch up your differences and, get the band together. And so I went out on that tour, and that's where I met Barry and Duane. And we were kids, and we're linked by this musical family. And so we'd stay in touch through the years. We'd see each other on the tours here and there. I got busy like going right into, having bands, and, so I wasn't on the road as much as like Duane, because Duane was, a little bit younger. But as far as what like kind of pulled the trigger to start this band was really timing. Timing was everything, because after Royal Southern Brotherhood, I put out 3 solo records, over the 2000 teens through that little era, like 2013 to 2018, 2017, and toured all over the world behind those 3 records with solo band. So, I think the first time that Duane and Barry and I like jammed was probably like 06, 07. And it was at our friend Pedro's house. Pedro was a bass player in Honeytribe, but also Dickie Betts' bass player for years. Pedro's a great cat. We were sitting around his dad's house with guitars, and I think I was the one that said, man, it'd be fun to do something sometime, And everybody's like, yeah, But, you get busy and time marches on, and like if somebody's not ready, then you're going to go forward with another project. And I think I brought it up again. I had run into Duane backstage at this music festival in England, and we jammed that night. And I was like, man, we ought to work together sometime, Yeah, man, call me. And it kind of never happens. And then my parents passed away. And my mom passed away first, and I canceled the rest of the year just to grieve and kind of get through that and handle her affairs. And I went back out on tour, I think for not very long, and my dad passed. And then I canceled the rest of the year then, and it was like 7 months of world tour. And I was just devastated. It was like both of them gone. And when I came out of the fog of that, I was like, I want to come back bigger than ever, with a bigger band, not a 3 or a 4-piece band, but like a 6-piece band. I want to write new music. And I thought of Duane, and I was just like, I called Duane. I'm like, what are you doing? And he was playing lead guitar in a band called Dawes. and there was a time where he might join them as a full-time member, and that didn't work out. And he was really ready to, like, record some music and instead of just being a lead guitarist, like, be the singer and the songwriter and all that.
A very different kind of band too.
Yeah.
Very different kind. Good band, but just a very different kind of band.
Yeah, I'm not super familiar actually, but he did a couple laps with them, probably a year or two. I can't recall exactly, but when I called him, he had just wrapped with them, and I had just finished my final solo record on my contract. So I was a free agent. He was a free agent. And I said, you know what? Why don't you just come out and open up for me? I'm like, we could start the tour in, say, 6 months. That'll give you some time to maybe record, if you don't have enough material for an LP, maybe an EP, and come out and be the opening act and play those songs and front your own band, and and then come out on the encore and we do some of our dad's music or a cool cover or whatever. Anyway, so the idea was, it was just kind of a slow boil, because I knew that if we got out there would be a chance to write music, and who knows what that would hold, And that's the thing. We weren't expecting anything, It wasn't like, oh, we have to be in a band now. We could have gone out the next year again with Duane opening for me and us jamming at the end. That worked just fine. But just so happens we wrote a song called Long Gone, and it's the final song on our first record, Down to the River. And it was just a really special moment, because it was like, we do have chemistry. We could totally have a band. And it just took off from there. We wrote more and more and more, and all of a sudden we're in Muscle Shoals. We're doing the debut record. We got signed to a major label, and it just took off. It's grown really quickly.
We're talking to, of course, Devon Allman from the Allman Betts Band. We'll be right back after this message from our sponsor. And now a quick word from one of our sponsors. Have you ever wanted a tightly wrapped American flag around your waist with a giant bald eagle face placed squarely on your junk? Or how about a Steve Harvey coronavirus mask? Or maybe the next evolution of jorts in the form of a hot and sexy denim Speedo. But maybe, just maybe, you're dying for a pair of Kansas City Chiefs overalls or even leopard pants. Yes, 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 and most definitely yes. And it's all pretty easily found at Shinesty, the perfectly weird party gear website that I find myself escaping to every time I need a mental break from the miserable 2020 we've been having. So check out our new sponsor at shinesty.com. That's the word shine, STY.com, and use the code LOADOUT15, that's LOADOUT15, at checkout. Now back to this less than spectacular show. And we're back on the Loadout Music Podcast with Devon Allman. Right before the break, we were talking about how the Allman Betts Band came together, and you were saying really it was almost, you'd been wanting to work with Duane for years, and you're just kind of, come on, man, come open up for a brother.
Yeah. I just figured it was win-win all the way around. Like, I wanted a really strong opening act. Duane wanted to go out there and front his own band. The fans, I knew would love seeing us together, and it just made perfect sense. And just really happy that the band was kind of born out of that year, 2018. I mean, I think we did a dozen countries, and we worked our ass off, and it was the first year in a tour bus, and we started, there were some rooms that were 400 and 500 seats, and within 18 months we're doing like 2,000 seat theaters and like some sellouts at that level, and playing, these really big festivals. And instead of going on at noon, all of a sudden we're going on right before the headliner at like 7:30 p.m. and like killer slots. And the fans really ate it up, and it's just been a great ride so far. We really have a special group of guys, and I've kind of said it before. I've had so many iterations of bands through my career, from solo to Honeytribe to Royal Southern Brotherhood to Vargas Blues Band to, I was even a member of the Schwag for like a minute, back in the day. Anybody in St. Louis knows that's one of the best Grateful Dead cover bands out there. And but I've always said it's like I couch surfed for 20 years and I finally bought a house, And Allman Betts Band feels like home for sure. So it's been a good ride.
And the band has this. When we were talking earlier, you used the word timeless. You have this kind of interesting timeless sound in that you pull from a lot of different feeds. There's some classic rock in there. There's some southern rock in there. There's a little bit of country in there. There's a little bit of blues in there. But it does have this kind of timeless feel back to that era that you and I were talking about, how much we loved of music, of the kind of that 70s rock and roll music. Bands like the Allmans, but also bands like Marshall Tucker Band and what have you. But you've been able to pretty seamlessly create that sound, but in a new kind of fresh, modern way, in one that's completely your own.
You just get lucky, I guess. I mean, I don't know. I don't really know what to attribute it to other than, everybody's influences and, the way they touch their instrument and, the right group of guys playing together and playing selflessly, playing for the song, play the song, not the instrument, But yeah, I mean, we just, we like what we like and the well that we tap into runs really deep. We don't really pay attention to, other bands out there or trends or anything like that. We're not, it's just sincere music, and it comes from the heart. And, we just try to make the best music that we can.
We talked earlier a little bit about the medium of radio to build an audience today and how much that's dramatically changed.
Yeah.
And how hard it is for a band of your genre. And there's some amazing, we'll just say country rock for lack of a better exact term.
Sure.
To find a station out there, and I was telling you earlier that I listen to Sirius XM Outlaw Country, and that's where I've heard you guys the most. But it's, it used to be that radio was the medium where you built the audience, you found the audience, and then that translated to concerts and festivals, and people wanted to see you, or you're at bars. But the game has changed, and I mean, how do you, when you think about that, I mean, it's got to make you want to pull your hair out. I mean, to a degree, because it's like you're building, and you guys have had some great fortune in that you've quickly kind of vaulted up to a pretty high level and gotten on some great stages.
Yeah, I mean, it's a different ball game for sure. It used to be you landed on the radio and you had a video on MTV, boom, you're filling 1,000-seat rooms. You're opening for a major headliner, and you're on your way to becoming a headliner yourself. There's no MTV. Radio. I don't know how many people really listen to terrestrial radio versus satellite radio. And if they're even using that to discover, newer music. So I think with the clutter and the traffic of this digital world, it's kind of like, gets back down to this essential, like, word of mouth is kind of back. Word of mouth is kind of the thing that helps us, hey man, have you heard of these guys? Their killer live band or like whatever, they do a great version of, this or that. I've seen that word of mouth really work for this band, and I think that goes for anything when we're living in a time that moves so quickly, and there's so many new avenues of promoting things, from, different internet entities to, satellite radio to, TV, YouTube, I mean, everything. I think it's kind of easier than ever to like have a YouTube video kind of go viral, but it's also kind of harder than ever because there's so much traffic. Like anyone can throw up a video or a song. So I think that word of mouth is everything. And I think, you really have to work. You can't put out a record and go tour for 4 months and then go sit at home. You really have to go pound it and pound it and pound it, which we do. And I think that's helped us tremendously. It's just, having the work ethic there, and being willing to, be away from home and go do the work. It's crazy. Like there's you could be on a major label and records just don't even sell anymore. They stream or, whatever. People pass them around, text each other their favorite songs. It's just totally different. I mean, if you would have told us in the late 70s that you're going to have this device and you're going to be in another state and you're going to send somebody your favorite song and they can listen to it immediately. I mean, there's some obvious, crazy things with technology that...
And you can watch porn on it. So it's,
it's right there. Everything, everything in the palm of your hand. Yeah. So it's I think it's, like I said, kind of the easiest time to be a musician and also the hardest at the same time. So there's a balance to strike there. And I think that's really... comes down to your live performances. If you make enough noise out there, then you kind of find yourself on Sirius Radio or in a magazine or whatever, and then it kind of just grows from there. So it's almost like a new way of having a grassroots kind of thing. I'm a record label owner too, and it's a really challenging time to be a record label owner because you pick an artist and you get behind the artist, you produce a record, you put it out, and it's like, you really have to market, you really have to get out there and work them, and it's a challenge, but it's a challenge that I love because I just believe in giving back, there's really no record labels out there that are nurturing artists. It used to be you'd get signed and they'd push you, and maybe your third or fourth record would kind of pop them through, Labels don't have that kind of patience anymore. So
the revenue's not there. I mean, it's the way it used to be.
Yeah, it's not, so I started Create Records 2 years ago. I signed Jackson Stokes and we put him out on tour opening for Allman Betts Band and made some music videos and he got to make a splash and now he's at that pivotal point where he's going to go off on his own and do the smaller rooms and and hope that he's scooped up enough fans over the last year and a half of touring with us. I just signed the River Kittens. That record comes out at the end of May. Really excited for them.
Yeah, they're a really good band.
They're so phenomenal. These two girls, Maddie and Allie, incredible songwriters, incredible voices. And I'm just kind of learning as I go. It's a brand new label. It's staffed. There's some money behind it, and the cool part of the construct is that they get to come out and open for Allman Betts Band, so they're instantly put in front of a lot of people. So I just hope it's a good way to go for. I'd love to launch a career per year until I leave the earth. So if I could launch 20 acts, I would love that.
Okay, I'll allow you to launch my career.
We'll talk.
Yeah, we'll talk. That's why we call ourselves the worst band ever. All right, so I need to ask you this because I'm insanely curious about this, and I'm sure you get asked this way too much. I equate that growing up Devon Allman is like growing up one of Michael Jordan's sons. Because anyone who's familiar, obviously, with your father's history and his catalog knows enough that Gregg's one of the greatest musicians of all time and led one of the greatest bands, rock and roll bands of all time.
Yep.
How difficult has it been growing up like that? It can't be easy.
I don't know. I remember in the 90s we played Riverport in St. Louis. And I can't remember if we opened for ZZ Top. We also opened for the Scorpions one year. It was like 20,000 people both times. And I remember one of those gigs, we got a pretty crap write-up in the local paper. It slammed us. And I was like heartbroken. I was really young. I think I was 21 years old playing to 20,000 people. And we probably weren't very good at all. But I remember my mom saying, not everybody's going to like you, And I kind of took that to the bank, you're going to find people that like it, and that's who you play for, You're going to find people that, they'll never be an Allman Brothers, or he'll never be. Well, of course not. There's only one Gregg Allman. There's only one Duane Allman, All I can do is try and be sincere and just keep my head down and do the work. You know, that outside noise and those comparisons and all that, I have to just kind of block it out, because I have an organic love affair with music, just like they did. And it's my own story. It's my own love affair. It's my own work. You know, I've been around the world a dozen or more times with music, and, you know, they didn't ride one of those miles. They didn't write one of my songs. They didn't cultivate any relationship in the industry. Like, my dad never said, hey, call this guy. He'll never, anything like that. Everything that I did on my own. And I started like playing to 10 people in Soulard. I mean, that's how it literally started. So yeah, you know, when you ask like, what's that like? You know, if you sat there and just had that be your main thought, I think your career would be over before it even started. So I just try to do the work.
Yeah. So your mom's words when you were 20, 21 really helped you kind of focus and make peace with that to a degree?
Yeah, I think so. You know, it's like, because that statement really had a wider reach and a broader context than just, you know, that newspaper slam, you know, write up. It's like, just do what you do. And, you know, and when she said, you know, not everybody's going to like you, well, that also means conversely that there will be people that do. So focus on those people, you know, and focus on your craft, and, you know, hope for the best, you know. And I don't know, I really try not to let that enter my headspace when I'm creating music, because I feel that would be a deterrent to, you know, focusing on this song becoming, you know, the best song it can be, or this performance being great. And, you know, every once in a while it comes in, like, you know, we do a couple of our dad's songs in the show, and it's a tip of the hat, you know. And every once in a while it's like, wow, man, you know, I really miss my dad singing that song, you know. And I'm glad we get to do it, you know, and kind of keep it alive for people, you know. And you see the reactions out in the crowd, like grown-ass men, you know, with tears rolling down their cheeks, because it's taken them back to a simpler time in their life. You know, that's a good feeling.
Yeah, that's nice. That's, you know, it's a great way to think about it, how you can kind of transport that audience.
It's like we're the curators of that experience, and that's an honor. That's an honor to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To a degree, it reminds me, there's a great Theodore Roosevelt quote. I think it's referred to as "man in the arena," but it's basically, you know, people looking in the arena, looking at you in the arena, are going to just kind of shit on you. Just fuck them. You know? It's like you're doing the work.
Man. I mean, you know, it's it's a wild thing. I mean, the Allman Brothers were huge, and they're really a soundtrack to people's good times, and the medicine for people's bad times, you know.
Yeah.
And I've met so many fans that, like, the Allman Brothers are everything to them, you know. So, like I said, when we dip into their catalog, and, you know, we do a 17-song show, and maybe, you know, throw in 2 Allman Brothers songs, it's just it's an electric feeling to do that for them.
Yeah. So obviously the last year, 14, 15 months has been, for a working musician who pays and feeds himself based on playing out, has been really weird and really frustrating.
And, for sure.
And now there is light at the end of the tunnel. There are shows being booked out.
Yeah.
And life continues. Is that like, you know, shackles coming off? Like, thank goodness I finally get to, because I mean, that's what musicians thrive on, right? Playing their art in front of thousands of people.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we got sent home when everyone else did. It was March 12. We had just played Los Angeles. Robbie Krieger joined us on stage, you know, did Roadhouse Blues with Robbie Krieger from the Doors. And the next 30 days of that tour were San Francisco, Portland, Seattle, Honolulu, Maui, Tokyo, Australia. It was like the
worst
coolest.
places.
Yeah, it's like the coolest part of the tour. And and it was frustrating, but it was kind of a on the other side of it. It was like, whoa, summer touring is a musician's bread and butter. The summer, like half of your take is the summer, and so I hadn't had a summer off since 2004, and I was like, this is nice, man. But once the summer was over, I was dying, and I think we were one of the first bands to get out there. So COVID kind of hit. March 12 was kind of the big day where everybody kind of went home and everything shut. I think in August we started our first drive-in shows, and then we would just go out and do little bits. So we've actually, since August, I mean, that's like 9 months. We've still been playing, and it's not the regular,
not a 5,000 seat theater.
Yeah, it's not the regular consistency of touring, because we hit it pretty hard. But about every month we'd go out and do a week worth of shows, or then 2 weeks, and and then instead of drive-ins, it was like parking lots or a big theater that would instead of 5,000 tickets sold, it's like 800, limited capacity and socially distanced, and somehow we made it through all that, but we did work. We found a way to work, and I tip my hat to my booking agent. He's a ninja. He's just incredible, and he found all the spots of the people that wanted to do, music safely. So we did it, and but now, obviously the tour dates are stacking up where their normal shows, normal festivals are back late summer, early fall, and we're ready, man.
That's great. Devon, thanks so much for your time.
Thanks
you,
for being
Aaron. Loadout. This has been great. And you've been listening to the Loadout Music Podcast. Our guest, Devon Allman. I am Aaron Perlett. And this has been a real honor. Really appreciate your time.
My pleasure. Thanks for coming.
All right, brother.
All right, buddy.
Hey, folks, if you made it this far, and judging by our numbers, you haven't, thanks for listening to the Loadout Music Podcast. You can always find us at loadoutmusic.com and wherever you like to get your podcasts, like iTunes or SoundCloud. And of course, as always, thanks to Gaslight Studios for hosting us. Have a good one.